Before Titanic became a movie, it was a trail of quiet photographs. Lifeboats crossing the Atlantic, a wireless operator carried ashore, crowds waiting for names. These 44 images tell the real story.
Titanic, 1912. In photographs, she does not look doomed. She looks ordinary and industrial, smoke drifting from the funnels while a small boat passes below, which is what makes the disaster feel so abrupt. Here, Titanic sits beside Olympic, her sister ship. The comparison matters because Titanic was not a lonely miracle of engineering. She belonged to a system of giant liners built to move people at scale. Carpathia at New York, April 1912. This is not the ship that sank, but the ship that carried the witnesses home. The crowd at the pier knew the truth would arrive with her. This famous sinking illustration shaped how generations imagined the night. But paintings compress chaos into one dramatic moment. The photographs that follow are quieter, and in many ways, more disturbing.
The main dining room shows the world Titanic promised: electric light, white tablecloths, and order. It is easy to forget that the disaster began inside a floating hotel, not inside a battlefield. At Halifax, recovery became part of the story. These scenes are not the glamorous Titanic of posters. They show the administrative aftermath, buildings, waiting people, and the slow work of naming the dead. Another Halifax view shows the same grim process from a different angle. The disaster did not end when Carpathia reached New York. For many families, it continued in morgues, cables, and unanswered names. This newspaper image turns the disaster into a public spectacle. Before radio updates reached everyone, headlines carried rumour, error, and shock. The story moved faster than confirmed information.
2 photographs of Carpathia with Titanic lifeboats. The lifeboats look small beside the rescue ship, and that scale is the point. Survival depended on tiny craft in a black Atlantic. A crowd waits for survivors from Carpathia. These people are not watching history from a distance. Many are waiting for one name, one list, or one message that may change their family forever. Survivors on their way to Carpathia. The image is rough, but the water tells the story. The rescue was not cinematic. It was a cold transfer between small boats and a ship that arrived too late to save everyone. These lifeboats are already away from Titanic. There is no grand finale in the frame, only empty sea and small hulls. The photograph makes the number of boats feel painfully physical. Survivors aboard Carpathia. The deck looks crowded and improvised, not heroic. People who had paid for a transatlantic crossing were suddenly wrapped into a rescue operation. A group of Titanic survivors stands on Carpathia's deck. Look at the mix of coats, hats, and blankets. The photograph is not staged elegance. It is people still processing a night without sleep. The crowd waiting in New York gives the disaster its second audience. Titanic sank far away, but the emotional impact landed in the streets, where strangers gathered around offices and piers. Another crowd waits for survivors from Titanic. The faces are hard to read, but the density is clear. This was not only a shipping accident, it became a public crisis in real time.
Louis and Lola were not their real names. The boys were Michel and Edmund Navratil, photographed before they were fully identified. Their father had boarded under another name and did not survive. The world front page shows how news turned tragedy into a document. Papers had to explain the impossible quickly, often while details were still confused. The archive preserves the uncertainty as much as the facts. Harold Bride, Titanic's surviving wireless operator, is carried ashore with bandaged feet. He helped send distress messages, then reached land injured, exhausted, and suddenly central to the story. A lifeboat moves toward Carpathia. The photograph is almost abstract: water, small figures, and distance.
That emptiness helps explain why rescue depended so heavily on timing.
The archive identifies this as a Carpathia view of the iceberg associated with Titanic. Whether viewers see certainty or ambiguity, the important detail is the scale. Ice could look quiet and still be deadly. Outside the White Star offices, people gathered around the company that had promised safety. This is where luxury branding met public grief and where official information became desperately valuable. At the White Star office after the disaster, the street becomes an information center. People wanted lists, not speeches. A single posted name could mean relief or collapse. Carpathia in dock at New York. She had not been built for fame, but for a few days she became the most important ship in the world, carrying survivors, lifeboats, and evidence. A bow view of Carpathia, with tugboats nearby. The tugs make the liner look almost still and controlled, a sharp contrast with the chaotic rescue she had just completed at sea. Carpathia's broadside, with tugboats alongside. By the time this image was made, the emergency had become a port operation. Docking, unloading, interviews, inquiries, and photographs. Captain Rostrom and his officers became symbols of the rescue. The photograph shows command as a group, not one dramatic hero. The Carpathia's response depended on officers, crew, and speed. Another officer group aboard Carpathia. These formal poses can feel stiff, but they record the people who turned a distress call into action while the Atlantic was still dark. Rostron with his wife. Images like this softened the public story, turning a rescue captain into a household figure. Fame arrived because Carpathia reached the lifeboats. Captain C.A. Smith of Carpathia appears here in uniform. Portraits like this are quieter than rescue scenes, but they remind us that maritime disasters were handled by identifiable working officers. Officers of Carpathia, photographed in 1913. A year later, the disaster still shaped how these men were remembered. Titanic became part of Carpathia's identity, whether they wanted it or not. Rostron and his wife again, surrounded by cameras and attention. The public needed faces to attach to the rescue. Rostron became one of those faces almost overnight. A chorus girl at a Titanic benefit. This seems unrelated until you see the date. The disaster quickly turned into fundraising, performances, and public rituals meant to process shock. Mrs. J.J. Brown, later mythologized as Molly Brown, appears in this 1915 portrait. The legend became louder than the photograph, but the real woman was tied to survival, relief work, and memory. A medal presented to Captain Rostron. Objects like this show how governments and survivors tried to make gratitude permanent. The rescue was turned into metal, ceremony, and official record. Rostron receives a Titanic medal. The room is formal, but the reason is not. Behind the ceremony were lifeboats, freezing survivors, and a captain who changed course in the night.
A family group of Titanic survivors. The pose is still, almost domestic, but the caption changes everything. These are not ordinary studio sitters. They are people photographed after surviving a mass disaster. Margaret Brown in another portrait. She is often remembered through later stories, but archive images bring her back into the ordinary world of clothes, posture, and public identity. Stuart Collett, a survivor of Titanic. A single standing portrait can feel plain, but every survivor photograph carries an invisible second image: the lifeboat, the cold, and the people missing beside them. This smaller survivor image shows the rescue story from another angle. A person arriving from Carpathia was not just a witness, he was living evidence of what happened beyond the horizon.
Stuart Collett, again, photographed as one of the survivors arriving on Carpathia. Repetition matters here, because newspapers needed recognizable faces, and survivors became proof that the unbelievable story was real. Captain Rostron alone. After the crowds and ceremonies,
The portrait reduces the rescue to one man in uniform. It is a public image, but it carries a private burden. Another Titanic benefit scene. These charity events show how quickly the disaster entered popular culture. Before movies and museums, communities used public gatherings to respond to the loss. George Cohan at a Titanic game. The image feels far from the ocean, and that is why it matters. Titanic did not stay at sea. It moved into theaters, sports grounds, newspapers, and public memory.